for having me. It's good to see Mayor's Berke and Dyer again. Been friends for a while, and I think it's great that you're focusing on this issue here. So I thought that your point was well taken, which is the events are quite traumatic for not just the communities, but the leaders involved. So ours now is 6 months ago, and it's been 6 months of reflection, and there was a lot that went wrong in Charlottesville. There was some that went right, and I think one of the things I'd like to talk about here is how the challenges in Charlottesville can be used as guidance for other communities, other cities, kind of figure this out going forward. So there's a lot that I can talk about. There's not that much time, so I wanted to focus on three things. Making sure the public understands the roles and the way the government actually works. The second thing is present First Amendment challenges and thinking about the First Amendment going forward. And the third is private sector and the roles that businesses have to play in this. So on the first, our experience in Charlottesville, this was kind of a year of being the object of invasions. There was a documentary that I saw last night, which I had not seen before. It had footage I hadn't seen called Alt-Right, Time of Rage, I think, and it was I think, the world premiere last night. And so I was like re-experiencing a lot of this just last night, watching some of this footage, and it correctly got the narrative last year, which is we had 3 events last year that each kind of accumulated on top of one another. And all this kind of started with a battle about these Confederate statues that we have, which the prior year. So we had in May, there was a torchlit rally by Richard Spencer, who founded the term alt-right, who is a graduate of the University of Virginia, and there were like 100 people who came to a park with tiki torches, and it was the goal was to terrorize the activity. Charlottesville, how many people here have been in Charlottesville? Yeah, like this is very common. I mean, it's one of the top wedding destinations in the country. A lot of people have been to UVA. It's a charming, very progressive city that voted for Bernie Sanders. That has. It's a very progressive city that we had started doing work on addressing the legacy of systemic racism in the history of a progressive southern city, and that put us on the map for a lot of these forces like Richard Spencer and these kind of white nationalists. So that was a controversy, and then we had the KKK come from North Carolina in July, and that led to a massive conflict between the left and the right, and the police, and the use of tear gas, and that kind of set the stage for an even worse event with the Unite the Right rally, which everybody has heard about, which was on the 11th and 12th. And throughout all of this, we have a council manager form of government in Charlottesville, which every Virginia city has, other than Richmond. I think almost 50% of American cities have this form of government, which goes back to the progressive era. But a lot of people don't have cause to think about their form of government until it really matters. And in the case of an invasion like this, it really matters. So the facts are that in Charlottesville, the city council and the mayor have no role in policing. You're not in the chain of command. You don't have an operational role. That all falls under the column of the city manager. So it's like the board of directors. It's like the board of directors and the CEO, and that's the form of government that 50% of American cities have. We just don't think about what's underneath the hood a lot of the time until another car runs into that car, and all of a sudden you have to think about the way the engine is designed. And that's what we have in Virginia, and it caused a tremendous amount of confusion for the public not to know throughout all those different events what role their elected officials had versus what role the police and the state, which has a significant role with the state police. When a small city, Charlottesville is also a city of about 50,000 people, dealing with international incidents and having to get a lot of help, hundreds of officers coming from the state. And in all these cases, like these mentions of tabletops, we did an independent review from the former U.S. attorney, which of all the aspects of the governance and the policing, which came out in December, and included a lot of suggested reforms, and tabletops was one of them. So to get all the stakeholders to sit down, walk this through multiple times so they all know what each other's role is. Ideally, the public knowing the respective roles of the different actors in security would be, I think, essential. And I think that a lot of communities could learn from the shortcomings of what happened in Charlottesville in these respects. The independent review we did was brutally honest about a lot of the policing issues that happened in terms of the design of the security plan. And there's a lot of learning there. So that's one on the goals. Number two, is this too loud? Is this okay? Okay. Number two, the First Amendment. There is, the First Amendment right now for cities dealing with these kinds of events is, the public also doesn't understand a lot about how the First Amendment works as a mandate on elected officials and governments. I think that some parts of our legal principles are going to have to adapt due to what we're seeing brewing online with the premeditation, with the artfulness of a lot of the way that these kind of mayhem actors or terrorists are operating. So, for instance, in Charlottesville, there was a lot of pressure on us to cancel these permits for the KKK and for the Unite the Right rally. And it was challenging to explain to the public the very crystal clear Supreme Court case law that we were under, which is absent what's called a credible threat or an incitement to imminent lawless action. Your hands really are tied as elected officials to stop an event. And furthermore, in Virginia, because of the form of government we have, the elected officials don't get involved typically in permitting decisions. And it's an administrative function of the administrative side. So when elected officials do get involved, it makes that decision more vulnerable to court challenge because it looks more like a decision you're making on the basis of content. Because why would elected officials get involved otherwise? So navigating through all these channels was really challenging. One of the personally painful things for me as a leader has been, well, I'm a sworn officer of the court, constitutional officer, but should I have anyway, almost as an act of civil disobedience or moral action, sought to stop the event, even though I knew what the law was, and even though it was crystal clear that we would lose in court, should we still have tried to stop the KKK from invading our town? Or, was it the right choice to do these lectures and education to the public about Nazis versus Skokie and Brandenburg versus Ohio and what our role really was in our free speech traditions is you do have a marketplace of ideas and you let the noxious, terrible ideas fail because they're noxious, terrible ideas. You don't subject them to prior restraint, usually. But these were unusual times, and I do think that the credible threat standard, I think it's going to have to evolve. And courts and law professors and judges and public officials are going to have to put our heads together and come up with a different set of standards for how we evaluate intentional mayhem, which is basically what Charlottesville had, where these actors they knew exactly how to describe what they wanted to do in Unite the Right without using any of the language of a planned act of intentional violence. So we never had any facts that would allow us to prevail in court, was the feeling. City Council, I led a charge about 10 days before to try and relocate this rally from the planned location of the Lee statue right off our very crowded downtown mall, a very urban location where we just felt like you couldn't have 1,000 people angry coming hell-bent for conflict with the other side, both sides. And we did everything we could to make it as content neutral as we could. We only were guided ever to talk in public about the size of the rally rather than public safety or the fact that extremists and bigots were coming to our city, because those would make it vulnerable to court challenge. So even public safety, you're not supposed to talk about public safety because that is seen as a backdoor to a heckler's veto, where the group that opposes the Free Speech Act, if they say, you make me so angry that I'm going to become violent, if the public official says, okay, well, I'm considering that, then it allows them to veto the free speech, and courts in the present era of First Amendment law frown on that, like big frowns. And we lost this decision to relocate the rally the night in federal court the night before the event happened. And we had tried to move heaven and earth to avert this hurricane, and we were sued by the Virginia ACLU and another plaintiff who was the organizer of the rally, and it was heartbreaking. And I said in a city council meeting, the First Amendment, the Constitution failed us here. I mean, everything that we had in terms of case law, legal instruments, to try and avert this tidal wave coming, you know, I mean, I think there is a lot to learn from the way that the different actors were working together, but if we were unable to prevail in court if we look at this rally. And the third thing, very quickly, I would say is I think there's a very vital charge for the private sector in dealing with extremism and tolerance. I know that Strong Cities is working on this. Airbnb on their own made a decision to cancel the reservations of all these people who were coming for the Unite the Right rally. That is courageous, bold, you know, new territory. I would submit that, you know, this is happening a lot with the debates about social media. I was doing a talk in the Bay Area recently that a VC firm put together, and there was a really interesting debate that happened between one payment company and another, where one payment company was saying, we don't see it as our job to pick winners and losers and who's using our service. And another one was saying, we disagree with that entirely. It is our job because there's all this social impact, corporate social responsibility debates happening here. I think that boards of directors and corporate citizens, they have a duty if they are possibly used or exploited by these forces to make decisions and to commit to playing a positive role in making our society more pluralistic and tolerant. And you don't get a laissez-faire philosophy. You can choose that, but I think that they should be, I think it's a time for choosing. And this is happening all across the social media companies, it's happening in boardrooms, and I think that they can be vital partners. You know, when nations slide toward authoritarianism, the private sector either eases that path, they can break it, they can help stop it. So I think that this is a time to help stop it.